Earlier this fall, Illinois Humanities partnered with the Chicago Humanities Festival to produce the American premiere of David Lang's Crowd Out, a composition for 1,000 voices, trained and untrained. For the October 1st performance, we recruited participants from every single neighborhood in Chicago. In fact, we had singing groups from 39 neighborhoods of the 50 participate in Crowd Out. And the piece of music didn't act just as a beautiful piece of music, although it was, but it also served as a platform to bring an often segregated city together. Crowd Out epitomized the Chicago Humanities Festival core belief, and one that Illinois Humanities shares as well, that humanity thrives when people gather, connect, and are inspired by one another. We hope that you'll have that experience this evening. Before I introduce David Lang, please allow me to handle some housekeeping. You probably saw in the slides that the festival has launched a new app to help us explore Fall Fest and its year-round programming. It's free and available on both Android and iOS devices. We also encourage you to connect with the festival on social media throughout the program. You can use @CHI_humanities, and you can use a hashtag, #CHFBelief. At this moment, however, while you can do that and tweet throughout the program, please make sure that your phone is silenced. Before I introduce David, I want to make a couple of thank yous. One to Elizabeth Liebman, who generously underwrote this program. Thanks to the Department of Cultural Affairs and Special Events, to Millennium Park, and to the Chicago Architecture Biennial for partnering on the Chicago production of Crowd Out. Thanks to Scrappers Film Group for filming Crowd Out, and we'll see a little bit of their work during the program tonight. And thanks to Northwestern University's Pritzker School of Law for allowing us to use this great space for the program this evening. And now to introduce David Lang. When I was a youngster, I didn't know much about new music, although I usually liked what I heard. But I knew that if anything had anything to do with Bang on a Can, that I would really like it, that it would be great. David Lang is one of America's most esteemed and performed composers, and the co-founder and co-artistic director of the legendary music collective Bang on a Can. He has received a Pulitzer Prize for music composition, was nominated for both the Golden Globe and for the Oscar for Best Original Song, and is a recipient of the Rome Prize. Tonight you'll hear David Lang speak, see footage of the performance of Crowd Out Chicago, and hear some of his songs performed by Northwestern University's Bienen Contemporary Early Vocal Ensemble, featuring the conductor of Crowd Out, Donald Nally. Please join me in welcoming David Lang.
Thanks, Angel. You can hear me? Okay, excellent. Thank you all for coming. So, yes, I am the composer of Crowd Out, and I heard Angel thank a bunch of people, so I want to thank all those same people myself. It was really an incredible undertaking. You know, as the composer, you are responsible for having interesting and strange ideas, and then sometimes you are lucky enough to hand them off to other people and say, this ridiculous thing, you solve it. And so I was really grateful that, that all these people worked so hard to make this thing happen, especially to Donald Nally, who we're going to hear more of later, the conductor from tonight, who was also the conductor at Crowd Out, and Tim Monroe also, who was one of the organizers. And also, thanks to the entire city of Chicago for this. This was the American premiere, and I don't think anyone else in America would be crazy enough to do this piece, so I really feel very grateful to you all. So, how many people was anyone there? Yes. Was anyone in it? Who was in it? Thank you so much. That's really great. I applaud you, so thank you. I am told that there is a really killer video, little excerpt from this, from Crowd Out. I haven't seen it yet, so, and I really want to see it, so I think we should see it now. We're probably about 3 or 4 minutes away from the opening of Crowd Out here in Chicago, from the American premiere of this piece. Well, I wrote this piece because I wondered what it was like to be in a crowd. You know, it's like when I'm in a crowd, I'm aware of both all the things that I gain from being in it, the things you agree about, the things that, you know, you need the power of the group to accomplish, but also the things that you lose. You know, it's like you lose your individuality. You may be afraid, you may be terrified, you may lose your control. So I'm always worried about both of those things. So, and that's sort of what this piece is about. A real effort was made to make the performers here look like a great cross-section of the city. I'm very appreciative of that effort.
I thought it would be interesting to introduce the piece so that you can see it as a graphic, okay? Like how the structure actually makes sense.
The piece can be performed by anybody, regardless of whether they can read music, and that's because of the nature of the instructions.
I shove, I glare, I mutter, I draw.
This is a piece that really welcomes all communities together to make music together in a really thrilling way from all across the city of Chicago, from all 50 wards.
Everything you need to perform this piece is on your cheat sheet.
I want us all, on my cue, to shout each of those words one at a time, as loud as you can.
I feel everything. I feel anxiety.
I am obsessed with being at the center of attention.
So that's the piece. Congratulations, you now know how to perform Crowd Out.
Hey everybody, welcome to Crowd Out's dress rehearsal. Okay, part 4.
I have to say I have no idea what is going to happen, and that's kind of liberating and terrifying. It's now beginning.
I draw deep breaths. I feel more confident and calm. I lost it all.
People talk so often about how segregated Chicago is, and I wanted people to see how wonderful Chicago is, that even though we live in segregation, that we are like-minded, we're one city, unified, and we do know how to come together.
And there's so many people out here, and it's a great day. The universe agrees with us already.
It was especially powerful when things were out of sync with one another, and when you had these interesting ways that things were rubbing up against one another, and you could hear distantly things becoming near.
When everybody just shouted, you could hear the echo, and it sounded like it was traveling through the city, which is really cool.
The lyrics and everything, they fit, because you do really feel that when you're in a crowd.
I push, I shove, I glare, I mutter.
We can't have a society, we can't make anything good without making something with someone else. I'm embarrassed to say I'm wearing exactly the same clothes. I do actually own other clothes. I'm really sorry. Okay. So that was really fun. It was really great. And I went around to every single group and sang with them during the performance. So for me, that was really exciting. I think I got to experience everyone from every different ward of Chicago, from professional people to little kids. I sang along with them, so I think in a way I had the best experience. It was super fun. Thank you. But I should say how this piece came about, and I'm not really a community-based composer, or at least I didn't plan on becoming a community composer. I'm a very nerdy classical musician, and classical music is about thinking of things that really great musicians can do and giving them very precise orders on how to do them. So usually I work with orchestras, I work with very highly skilled musicians, and I make them rehearse forever to work really hard, and I'm really fussy. So I myself am shocked that I have now got sort of into this world of doing things with people who are not at that level, and I can tell you how it happened. So 25 years ago, I was doing a project in London, and it was one of these projects that required a lot of rehearsal, so I was there for a week, and I was there staying at a friend's flat, and I had nothing to do at night because we would rehearse all day. And I would wander around the city trying to think of something to do. And I wandered through the neighborhood of Islington. And in those days, that's where the Arsenal football team, the soccer team, had their stadium. So I was walking by right as a soccer match was starting to begin. And there was someone outside selling tickets. And I thought, I'm not a sports person, and I'm not a soccer fan, but I have nothing better to do. And so I bought a ticket, I went in, and so you enter this arena, there's 60,000 people, and the first thing that I noticed is they're all singing, they're all yelling, they're all screaming, and occasionally there are these songs that every single person in the audience knows, and they start singing them. Most of these songs are very lewd, I will say. So I was very embarrassed to hear a lot of these songs. But the exciting thing about it for me is thinking as a composer who orders highly skilled musicians to do very specific things, the idea that there was a bunch of ordinary people and they were all making this music together. They were all making this sound together. If you knew the really rude and disgusting and crude song, it didn't matter if you had a good voice. You were welcome to sing along. And everyone was welcome. And so that feeling is something that classical music doesn't always have. The feeling that everyone has a doorway into participating in a piece. So I wasn't really watching the match much. I was listening to this incredible noise. And so I thought about how cool that was, and I thought about how I felt. And of course, being the nerd that I am, I spent the whole time trying to check it against my memory of this unbelievable book by the Nobel Prize winning author Elias Canetti called Crowds and Power, which is this kind of pseudo-anthropological book where he imagines all the things that happen to you when you are in a crowd. So I came out of that experience, I'm thinking just what an amazing sound it was and an amazing community that got built to yell all these really rude songs. So a little bit later, I got a phone call from a festival in Germany, from a festival in Berlin, and the guy, it's back from the era of telephones and not email. So the guy called me on the phone and he said, David Lang, we love your music. We want to commission a piece from you, a piece only we can commission because we love you so much. What is the piece that you have always wanted to do that no one will let you do? We will let you do it because we love you so much. And without thinking about it, I said, oh, I have that piece. I want to write a piece for 1,000 people yelling in the street. And he said, oh, we call you back. And that's very funny, right? Right? This is a composer's life. You think of something interesting to do, you make the mistake of telling someone you actually want to do it, and then you are humiliated by not being allowed to do it, you know? So I told this story as a joke for many, many, many years because it's so funny. Then I won the Pulitzer Prize, and I told this story after I won the Pulitzer Prize, you know, in a room full of people that I was hoping I could crack up with a good joke. And everyone laughed because it's very funny, and one very serious person in the corner came up and said, "Oh, I'll commission that piece." And then I had to do it. So I made this piece, and I discovered all sorts of really important and incredible things about this. I have to check my phone because it's where my watch is, and we're going to be listening to music being sung. I have a little more time, so don't think that I'm checking the news of the indictments which came down today. But really, that's what I've been doing all day. So anyway, so I learned some really interesting things. You know, one of the things that I really learned is that the thing about classical music that I said I enjoyed, which is thinking up really hard things for people to do and watching them do them, I realized during the making of this piece that that is of value for everyone. The value of having something difficult that you have to work on, that you have to accomplish, that you have to achieve, and that you need your neighbors, you need a community of people to accomplish, that you can actually have that same experience of making something difficult for normal people to accomplish. And you still, at least for me, I still get that same power that I get out of watching professional musicians struggle to do something hard. Because this piece is very difficult. As the people who are in it know, you have to rehearse, you have to be there. It's not a flash mob. It's not something where you show up and be yourself. It actually is something which is very beautiful and powerful to me, which is people coming together to solve a problem. One of the things that I think is so beautiful about music in communities, which which is on my mind now because of the political situation we are in and because of the world we live in, is that music offers something great that few other disciplines offer, few other experiences offer, which is that you have to believe that it has value before it can have value. You have to believe, you have to have faith that music is capable of transmitting emotion, of transmitting anything that you might want or need before you can receive it. I mean, what could be more ridiculous than thinking that someone scraping some horsehair across a box is capable of moving you? You have to make some leap of faith in advance that it has value, that it is capable of giving you something before you are able to receive that thing. And in that way, music is a little bit like religion. Music is a little bit like those things which we don't understand that somehow bind us together. And because we live in a world at this moment where we are being encouraged to separate, we're being encouraged to find our little niche, we're being encouraged to feel badly about other segments of the population, those things which bring us together are of supreme value. And to me, that's the reason why I've started doing more of these community projects, because I think this act of faith that's necessary, all of the people who participated in this piece, you had to imagine for yourself that coming together would give you something powerful before you were capable of receiving that power. And what I like about music, as far as this, is that it's completely, in a way, useless. It doesn't really do anything. It doesn't build a building at the end. It doesn't paint a picture. It doesn't give money to anyone. It doesn't, certainly not to the people who do it. You come together only for the nobility of doing it, right? When you come to a concert, you are coming there because you believe that there's something visceral which can be transmitted from a musician to you, and that it is worth getting that message. So it doesn't do anything else, right? So there's something incredibly noble and pure about the transaction. And to me, that's why it becomes the perfect place to build these kinds of communities. So I did Crowd Out, and Crowd Out has a kind of personal relationship. So it's about the things that I imagine you feel as an individual as you watch what you are losing towards to the crowd. So the crowd has this incredible power, and Crowd Out is about the things that you might think as an individual. So every phrase that's shouted starts with the word I. The things that you feel good about, the things that you feel bad about. So there's a way in which Crowd Out is very introspective, and it can be some sort of a little bit of a downer, actually, because it's very serious about who you are, what you lose when you're in this crowd. So at the London premiere of Crowd Out, the head of the London Symphony Orchestra walked up to me and said, "That was really beautiful, that was really fantastic. I would love to help commission another version of this piece, a different version, a sequel to this piece, but one that's a little more optimistic." So I premiered that piece this past year at Lincoln Center. It's been commissioned by a bunch of people, but the first presenter was Lincoln Center, mostly Mozart, and that was a piece for 1,000 amateur choral singers called The Public Domain, and that one is concentrating on things that people share. The piece which I have just finished, which is being premiered in Philadelphia at the beginning of December, is a piece I wrote for all the broken instruments in the Philadelphia public school system. So someone came to me, the director of the Temple University Contemporary Art Museum came up and said that he somehow had miraculously gotten access to all 1,500 broken instruments in the Philadelphia school system and asked if I could think of something to do. So I made a piece of music that can be done by, we're going to have members of the Philadelphia Orchestra and school children who can't really play musical instruments yet, and everything in between. And I made a piece of music that they can all do together that kind of equalizes them. And they will all be played on these instruments which are all broken. And so I've asked for things to be done, and I'm expecting that what you're going to get is someone trying really hard to do something that these instruments can't do. So the performance is for 500 people on December 3rd. And then to me, the really most noble thing about that project is that we've raised enough money from this project so that at the end of this project, all of those instruments will be repaired and returned back to the public schools. I think these things are very noble. I think they're really important, and I think they're really necessary. And again, I think one of the things that's so powerful about music is that I look at the world that we live in right now, and I try to compare it to experiences I've had in choirs and I've had in orchestras. I never, in any orchestra I was in, had the experience where I thought, I don't like the person sitting next to me, so I am going to play badly. I never said, when singing in a choir, I hate the person who is standing next to me, I don't like them, so I'm going to wreck their part. The thing that's beautiful about this music is it really is this abstract thing that happens where people come together to build something together, and it is the building of that thing that ultimately is our greatest value, I think. So I'm hoping to do more of these community things. I still write lots of music which is really hard. I'm not giving that up, but this little sidelight for me is really interesting and has been very inspirational. So now I think it is time to have some singers come here and sing some real music. It is not music which is yelling, or shouting. It's actually some of the hard music that people have to work very hard to try to make sound like it's easy. Which is, I always think, professional composers, like the great masters of the past, know how to make music which is very simple to play and sounds really difficult. My music is exactly the opposite in these kinds of pieces. I write music which is really hard, and when you have performers this good, it sounds really effortless. So let's welcome the Bienen Contemporary Early Vocal Ensemble. Here they are. So while they are coming up, I'm going to say that I'm going to introduce the three pieces which are being done here. And I won't say too much. But the first piece is a piece that I've actually never heard before. I wrote for Donald's Choir in Philadelphia, and I wrote it last year, and it has Chicago content, because actually all my relatives grew up in Chicago. So my parents grew up in Chicago, and I have relatives. I think I may even have relatives in this audience here, so hi. And this is a piece that I wrote. Donald asked me for a piece, and my uncle from Chicago had just passed away. And so I wrote a piece in his memory, which is the last line of my translation, my version of the last line of the Kaddish, which is the prayer you say in memory of the dead for Jews. And so the words are, it says, the name of the piece is called Make Peace, and the entire text is, if you can make peace, make peace. In the heavens, in us, in all the world. And here they are. Okay, the next piece is a piece called Last Spring, and this piece was a piece I wrote for a chorus in Norway, dedicated to the music of Edvard Grieg, the great Norwegian composer. So, and it was by a choir called the Edvard Grieg Choir. So I only knew, bless you, I only knew one choral piece by Edvard Grieg, even though I guess he has enough music you can dedicate an entire choir to him. But I only knew one piece, and that was a piece which was called Last Spring, the translation into English. So I made my own translation of the text. And this text is about spring coming and all the beautiful things that happen in spring, where an old man is watching spring flowers bloom and ice melt and spring coming again. But the man is also wondering if this will be the last spring that he ever sees. So, so that's this piece. I'm not going to say the whole text, but you'll figure it out. And the last thing we will sing, I say we, but it's not really, I'm not really doing anything. The last thing we will share is a piece I wrote called Where You Go, which is my setting of sort of like the key sentence from the book of Ruth. So it's where Ruth is asked by her mother-in-law, Naomi, if she will, once her husband has died, Naomi's son, if she's going to go leave and go back with Naomi. And she says, where you go, I will go. Where you stay, I will stay. Where you live, I will live. Where you die, I will die. I always love those lines, and then I go back and I look at the book of Ruth, and I realize that, like most of the book of Ruth, is this incredibly dry legal treatise about how well, who owns who? And how do you have control over this? And what are the things that you have to do? What are the steps you have to do in order to prove you own this land or this person? But those few lines, they're amazing. Please, a big hand for them. B-C-E-V-E. BCE. BCE. Okay, thank you. That was really beautiful. Thank you all. Okay, well, this concludes both the musical and spoken portion of our evening, but I will be standing right here if you would like to come up and chat. I'm not going anywhere. So again, thank you to everyone who participated in Crowd Out, and thanks especially to the Humanities Festival for having the harebrained idea to do it in the first place. So thank you all very much.